Imagine meeting 10 millionaires in a room. How many do you think built a startup? 5? 7? Maybe all of them? The answer is probably one, or maybe none. That sounds impossible because the internet has trained us to believe one story, the founder story, the billionaire in a hoodie. The entrepreneur who drops out of college, builds an app, and becomes the next tech legend. It's exciting, it's dramatic, and it's everywhere. But here's what rarely gets attention. Most millionaires never start a company. They never pitch investors. They never raise venture capital. They never appear on magazine covers. Instead, they quietly build wealth through careers, investments, real estate, ownership, patience. They're invisible because boring doesn't go viral. This creates one of the biggest financial misconceptions of our generation. People think entrepreneurship is the default path to wealth. In reality, it might be the exception. So if starting a business isn't what creates wealth for most millionaires, what does? The answer completely changes how you think about money, and by the end of this video, you may realize you've been chasing the wrong dream all along. Level 1, the millionaire myth. Ask someone to picture a millionaire. They'll probably imagine someone like Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, or Mark Zuckerberg. Founders dominate headlines. But headlines aren't reality. One of the most influential studies on wealth came from The Millionaire Next Door. Researchers spent years interviewing wealthy Americans. What they discovered shocked almost everyone. Most millionaires weren't famous. They weren't celebrities. They weren't startup founders. Many drove ordinary cars, lived in average neighborhoods, and worked surprisingly normal jobs. Engineers, doctors, accountants, managers, sales professionals, business executives, even teachers who invested consistently over decades. They became wealthy through one simple principle. They spent less than they earned, then invested the difference, year after year, decade after decade. No viral success, no overnight fortune, just consistency. The media rarely celebrates this because consistency isn't exciting. A startup that reaches $1 billion valuation in 5 years, that's news. Someone quietly investing every month for 30 years, nobody notices. Yet statistically, that second person is far more common. This is our first lesson. Visibility isn't the same as probability. Just because entrepreneurs dominate social media doesn't mean they dominate the millionaire population. In fact, many wealthy people intentionally avoid attention because while everyone else is chasing status, they're quietly buying assets. Level 2, why businesses are so risky. Now let's challenge another assumption. Starting a company can absolutely make you rich, but it can also make you broke. Most businesses don't survive. Some close within the first year. Many never become profitable. Even successful businesses often leave founders exhausted, stressed, and financially exposed. Think about what entrepreneurship actually requires. You invest your savings. You borrow money. You work nights, weekends, holidays. You sacrifice stable income for uncertain income. You're betting that customers will eventually reward years of sacrifice. Sometimes they do. Often they don't. This is why many financially intelligent people choose a different strategy. Instead of creating a business, they buy tiny pieces of thousands of businesses. That's exactly what happens when you invest in stock markets. Every share represents ownership without hiring employees, without paying rent, without worrying about payroll. While entrepreneurs build businesses, investors own businesses. It's a completely different game. Take Warren Buffett. People know him as one of history's greatest investors. But notice something important. His greatest wealth didn't come from founding dozens of startups. It came from buying exceptional businesses, holding them, and letting time do the heavy lifting. His favorite holding period? Forever. That's not flashy, but it's incredibly effective. Meanwhile, thousands of startup founders work just as hard, maybe even harder, yet never reach financial independence. Hard work alone isn't enough. Where that work compounds matters even more. Level 3, the secret millionaires understand. Let's imagine 2 friends. Alex starts a startup. Jordan gets a high-paying engineering job. Alex spends 5 years trying to make the company survive. Some years there's no salary. Some years there's debt. Jordan earns a stable income, lives below their means, invests every month into diversified assets, receives employer retirement contributions, gets annual raises, reinvests dividends. Who becomes wealthier? Most people instinctively choose Alex. Reality isn't so obvious, because wealth isn't just about income, it's about compounding. Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. Whether or not he actually said it, the idea is undeniably powerful. Money that earns returns, then earns returns on those returns, can eventually outperform extraordinary effort. Imagine investing consistently from your 20s, every month, every year, for decades. At first, nothing seems to happen. The progress feels painfully slow. Then something remarkable occurs. Growth begins accelerating, not because you're working harder, but because your money starts working for you. This is why so many millionaires focus less on earning millions and more on owning appreciating assets, stocks, real estate, private equity, businesses they didn't have to build themselves. Ownership quietly replaces labor. Eventually, your investments may earn more than your paycheck. That's when wealth becomes freedom. Not because you're richer than everyone else, but because your time is no longer entirely for sale. Level 4. Why entrepreneurship gets all the attention. So if entrepreneurship isn't the dominant path to becoming a millionaire, why does everyone believe it is? Because our brains love extraordinary stories. Nobody makes movies about someone investing in index funds for 40 years. Hollywood prefers dramatic heroes. So does YouTube. So does social media. Success stories spread, failure stories disappear. This creates something psychologists call survivorship bias. We only see the winners. Imagine watching airplanes return safely from battle. You inspect the bullet holes. You reinforce those exact locations. Seems logical, except it's wrong. During World War II, statistician Abraham Wald realized something brilliant. The planes that returned weren't the problem. The planes that never came back had been hit somewhere else. The missing data mattered more than the visible data. Entrepreneurship works the same way. You see the billion-dollar founder. You don't see the thousands who quietly shut down their companies. Social media amplifies survivors. Algorithms reward extraordinary outcomes. Nobody uploads videos titled, "I built a business, earned less than my previous job, and closed after 4 years." But those stories exist in huge numbers. Meanwhile, millions of professionals quietly become wealthy. Nobody interviews them, nobody writes biographies, yet they're buying homes, growing portfolios, funding retirements, and building financial security without ever becoming entrepreneurs. Success has a publicity problem. Failure has a visibility problem. Level 5, the real formula for wealth. Now here's the insight that changes everything. Millionaires don't necessarily optimize for excitement. They optimize for mathematics. They understand something most people ignore. Wealth is usually created by the gap between what you earn, what you spend, and what you own. Not by the title on your business card. Whether you're a founder, a software engineer, a doctor, an electrician, or a corporate executive, the same equation applies. Increase income, control lifestyle inflation, acquire appreciating assets. Repeat consistently. Notice what's missing. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to become an entrepreneur. You don't have to chase every side hustle. And, of course, if you genuinely love building companies, go for it. Entrepreneurship remains one of the fastest ways to extraordinary wealth, but it's also one of the riskiest. The mistake is believing it's the only path. Sometimes the smartest financial decision isn't starting another business. It's buying ownership in existing ones. It's developing valuable skills, negotiating higher income, and investing consistently, allowing decades, not hype, to create wealth. Ironically, many founders eventually become wealthy only after selling their companies, then investing the proceeds exactly like everyone else, because eventually, almost every fortune ends up following the same rules. Capital earns more capital. Time multiplies both. Conclusion. The internet sells a dream. Start a company. Scale it. Exit for millions. It's possible, but it's not typical. Most millionaires don't become wealthy because they built the next global startup. They become wealthy because they mastered habits that rarely trend. Patience over excitement. Ownership over consumption. Consistency over intensity. They understand that wealth isn't always about taking the biggest risk. Sometimes it's about avoiding unnecessary ones. The loudest path isn't always the most profitable, and the most profitable path is often surprisingly quiet. So before you assume you need to launch the next billion-dollar company, ask yourself a different question. Am I building income? Am I buying assets? Am I giving compounding enough time to work? Because becoming wealthy isn't about copying the rarest success story. It's about following the strategy that works for the greatest number of people. The millionaires who quietly reached financial freedom understood one truth long before the rest of us. You don't have to own a company to build wealth. Sometimes you simply have to own a piece of one.